So, hey everyone, welcome all of our readers. Today with us we have a person who is well known into the startup community, Dr. Anirudh Malpani, who is a specialist and he is an angel investor also. Welcome Malpani sir to the this interview section of Next Big Brand.
Yeah.
So, as a lot of you know, recently there has been a lot of things like going around the startup space. So we'll start with the first thing which happened. That was a issue with a controversy regarding the work culture at Byju's, and then there was a whole lot of series of events which followed. So I'll request Malpani sir to like take us through that whatever happened there and what happened after that.
I actually think, especially given the fact that your site is about branding, this
Yeah.
would actually make a great case study on how to destroy a brand. Because I think effectively that's exactly what these guys have ended up doing. In their attempt to try to protect their brand, they've actually ruined it. Let me give you some context. I'm an IVF specialist, which means I'm a doctor. I'm also an active angel investor. I've been on LinkedIn for more than 10 years, had 180,000 followers because the beauty about being an angel investor is you can say the truth. You're not politically connected. You don't have to suck up to anyone. You don't have to keep anyone else happy. You do what you think is right. And the beauty about being a doctor is you believe in information therapy. You believe in educating patients. You believe in letting people know what the truth is and be transparent, which is why we've written so many books for patients. And we applied the same philosophy for the startup space. That is an investor. Part of my job description was to educate entrepreneurs. The advantage of being an investor is you have a lot more experience, you have money, you have a team, you've done this before. For a lot of entrepreneurs, it's the first time, and a lot of them get very misleading mixed signals from what they read in the press. Half the press has been bought, sad to say, and a lot of the stories are just planted or their press releases, and they don't know what's right, what's wrong. So a lot of them think, oh, the first thing to do if you want to do a startup is create a pitch and find a VC who invests in you. And therefore, we were just talking back to basics that the purpose of a business is to service customers. Your most important source of revenue is your customer. Focus only on one thing, delight your customer, not rocket science, just basic common sense one on one. And the tragedy is it needed someone like me to say it because obviously was a lot of it wasn't being said, so I was happy to say it. While doing this, a lot of people started pointing out problems, and one of the problems they talked about was the problems which were at Byju's. Now, I should tell you straight away, anytime a startup does well, all other startups do well as well. And let me explain to you why. So, for example, the Indian startup ecosystem got a big shot in the arm after Walmart bought Flipkart. They got a huge exit. So everyone said, wow, yeah, there is money to be made in the startup ecosystem. Before that, no one really cared. So all investors got excited, everyone got excited. So every time people like Byju's, make a lot of money, it's good for all startups. People don't understand that. This is not a competitive space where there's space for only one player. The edutech market is huge. I mean, there are so many millions of children. If tomorrow even Baiju has a million subscribers, that's not going to take away the fact there's space for others. So it's actually in every investor's best interest, especially me as an angel investor, to want the startup ecosystem to boom and that everyone sees, because all these exits start getting a lot of press, publicity. Everyone wants to join the game. So I think this entire thing that we want to bring a startup down is very short-sighted and completely incorrect. There is absolutely no reason to want to do that. But having said that, you want startups to succeed by doing the right thing, not the wrong thing. You don't want them to be unethical because the moment they start doing that, that starts becoming the benchmark for everyone else. Oh, this is what we need to do. This is what we need to do to grow. So other investors start telling their founders, look how Byju's has grown. Why can't you grow the same way? Then everyone starts taking these horrible shortcuts of advertising, misleading advertising. It's a long list. So some of it, of course, was the work culture. See, when your major focus is on keeping your investors happy, investors, let's be honest, only care about one thing, and money. They need an exit, they need to make a return, which means they have to push the accelerator and say, okay, last time we had a million students, now we want 2 million. 2 million ke 4 million kaise hone wale hain? And I want that done in 1 year. You can only get that kind of rise by advertising and by mis-selling, unfortunately. Because let's be honest, if your product was really good, you wouldn't need to advertise because one delighted parent would tell a second delighted parent, hey, this is a great product. This is what you should be using. That's called brand ambassadors. That's called guerrilla marketing. But when you don't have a good product, these are all the shoddy tactics which you need to start using in order to start selling your product. And I think that's happened. So that one, there were a lot of misleading claims in the ads, and a lot of this is public domain. Remember, uh, I don't have kids who signed up for Byju's, but all this information is available in the public domain. The Ken did an article, Sputnik did an article, and the article started off with how Byju's managers would abuse their salespeople. And part of the reason we need to understand is the where does the rot start from? It always starts from the head downwards, which means if the investors force the CEO to generate revenue, the only way he can generate revenue is by getting his sales guys to set targets and get them to perform, which means effectively customers are not treated as students who want to be taught or who need learning, or we don't care about learning outcomes. We only say all those things on the ads or in your press releases or in the interviews which you give to give good look. But in reality, what do you want? As many students as possible, whether they're happy, unhappy. So you give them all kinds of discounts, you make all kinds of promises, sign them up for multi-year subscriptions. And let's be honest, it's not very hard to sell a parent. Indian parents are vulnerable and they especially target a certain income group who's not very savvy, who will pretty much say yes, and the whole thing is, did these schools, they say schools are terrible because they don't teach anything. Did these teachers, teachers are terrible, they don't teach anything, and that's why your kid needs tuition classes. And that's why you need to come to us. So they get them to sign up, and the biggest tragedy is that because these are expensive and these parents don't have money because they're not well off, they make them sign up through loans. These are educational loans which third parties provide as EMIs. Now, poor parents, they trust, this guy's talking very well, sweet fellow, good for my kid, they sign. And then they sign with the promise that if you're unhappy, we'll give you a refund. So if they're unhappy and they ask for a refund, the guy who sold them the package is not available. He just blocks their calls. Then you try talking to call center, help, help, help. Everyone just ignores you. After the 30 days are up, you're screwed. You're stuck. And then the worst thing is Byju's washed its hand off because they've got their money from the intermediary, the financial intermediary who's taken on the risk. The poor parent is stuck paying EMIs, and if he doesn't pay the EMIs, his entire civil cost takes a cost. And then he gets all these threatening calls. So it was a great way of luring parents, getting them to sign up without their understanding, taking advantage of their ignorance, gullibility, and helplessness. So therefore, the problem was with the work culture, the problem was the false ads, the problem was with making promises. So I just talked about this openly. Please understand, I didn't talk about it because I have anything against Byju's. I talked about it because it was the truth, because I think that's the right thing for citizens to be doing, not to keep quiet. A lot of people say, "Tere baap ka kya jata hai?" Yeah, you must be having some agenda, some hidden interest somewhere or the other, or someone must be pushing you, or you're doing it to protect your startups. And I think that's ridiculous. Why can't people do the right thing because it's the right thing to do? And I always tell people, you should be ashamed that you kept quiet when you knew this was going on in front of your eyes, under your nose. Because you got to care. You're so selfish that you only care about your children and you don't care about these other poor people's children. You don't care about the next generation. I'll tell you one more thing again. So then, because I met these posts, and I would say the truth, there was nothing dishonest about the posts. They were frank, honest, critical posts. An investor from who happens to be a VC from Byju's called up and said, I don't think what you're doing is very smart. It's a good idea. In a way, that was like a veiled threat. Why don't you talk to Byju's? He's actually a great guy. So he gave me Byju's number. I spoke to Byju's. Byju's said, yes, you're right. We will fix this problem. He gave me his HR head's number. I spoke to him. He said, yes, you're right. We need to fix this. We've grown too rapidly. And he actually publicly thanked me on LinkedIn, saying, we need to fix our work culture. And his last line was, it's not enough just to say this, we will walk our talk. And then after that, they got me kicked out of LinkedIn. Of course, they didn't say, we're going to get you kicked out of LinkedIn. And that's another long story. So LinkedIn said, you're saying all these unflattering things and uncomplimentary things, and this is not in compliance with our terms and conditions. So, we're going to delete your account. I said, before deleting my account, give me a chance to present my story, escalate this. Let me talk to you, someone else. Sorry, we're not interested, no response, which is why we've actually gone to Mumbai High Court. We filed a writ petition against LinkedIn India, saying you cannot censor people's right for free speech.
Very true.
You know what their argument is? Their lawyer comes up and says, LinkedIn India does not care about the Indian judiciary. LinkedIn India is not answerable to the Indian High Court. LinkedIn India says the Indian judiciary can go to hell because we are only answerable to the US government and the US judiciary. Because our platform is run by LinkedIn USA. So if you want to sue us, you go sue us in USA. We don't care about your Indian high courts. They've actually written this down. They've said that, hey, we're just a marketing arm and otherwise we're no one else. Can you imagine? They earn money in India in crores. They they earn money in India from members, they earn money from advertisements, they pay salaries in India. So when it suits their convenience, it's all LinkedIn. And when it doesn't suit their convenience, yeah, we can't do anything, we're just linked in India, which really has got my goat. That burns me up. You can't have these double standards. And I think this is the big problem with a lot of corporates. They're completely soulless and heartless. All they care about is making money. So we'll have our day in court. We have a next hearing in 10 days. So we'll see. And the good thing about going to court is they can't lie.
Yeah,
Then everything just such a to nikal hi jayega.
very true.
Anyway, so got kicked out of LinkedIn. So then what? So I had a Twitter account. So, I wasn't very active on Twitter. So I said, let me see what's happening on Twitter. That's the time Byju's bought White Hat. And the moment they bought it, because now they have so much more money and they need to grow so much more because they spent so much money. They didn't buy Whitehead Jr. out of charity. When you spend whatever $300 million or whatever in buying a company, you expect a return. Therefore, Whitehead Jr. again pushed the accelerator and their ads became much worse and much more. And there were all kinds of ridiculous ads. Wolf Gupta earns 15 crores, 20 crores. The next day it's 100 crores. He works for Google. He works for this, that, and the other. Started calling them out. And the good thing is I wasn't the only one. There was someone else called Pradeep Punia who's far
Yes.
smarter than I am. He's a technologist. He understands, exactly what they were doing, and he actually documented it far better than what I could. And then Whitehead Jr. decides, okay, fine, we're going to sue Pradeep Punia. So I said, you shouldn't be doing that. And then the next day they sue me. So, and they're very smart, I must say that. They spend a lot of money on these legal fees. You know how much the legal fees are for the court? These are getting about 25 lakhs. Plus, forget about their lawyers' fees. They all get these big shot lawyers who must be charging at least a crore for each attendance. But इतना सारा पैसा है तो किधर तो भी फेंको तो IPL ad के ऊपर फेंको नहीं तो uh, legal lawyers को दो whatever this thing is. I don't understand. So it is where we get our chance now to explain. And the thing is, Whitehead Juniors publicly acknowledged in High Court that we created Whitehead Junior's mascot called Wolf Gupta. This is an imaginary child. Imagine if you, what is the difference between imaginary child and a lie? I don't understand. Effectively, you're telling in court, yes, we lied. We lied when we said there was a Wolf Gupta. There is no Wolf Gupta. So all that is going to start coming out. What are you saying? It is acceptable to lie to the Indian public by creating fictional characters? So that's one thing. And the trouble, of course, with the Indian government and the Indian consumer complaints and with Indian parents is, ठीक है चलता है सब लोग करते हैं हमारा क्या है ये तो बड़े लोग हैं no one wants to stick their neck out. Now they're selling in the US.
Hmm.
And the US is not so kind. They're not so kind to people who try to cheat US citizens. And there is a Federal Trade Commission which takes fraud against US consumers very seriously.
Serious.
So now what you're going to see is US citizens are going to start suing Whitehead Jr. and Byju's. And these are going to be multi-billion-dollar suits because these are going to be class action suits. These are not just one kid they've cheated. They've cheated a lot. And all their documentation. So in one sense, the case is already there. Someone just needs to file it. So I think it's just a matter of time till this gets filed. Because they're not just trying to fool Indian parents. They're fooling US parents. They're doing this globally. And I think that's this kind of unethical thing is just not acceptable.
So, what do you think? I mean, for example, when I was growing up, so all these IIT ads, the ads for IITs, NITs, all these engineering and medical colleges, and they were there, and I think they were doing the same kind of thing. What is happening right now? So, if we put it that way, so that was offline marketing, and it was like the same. And what I believe they were playing out on that, fear of missing out that emotion of Indian parents. So what do you think drives the consumers towards all this? Like, what are the main factors of the consumer? Why the consumer goes towards this?
Let's be honest. One thing these guys have mastered is not how to teach students, but how to sell. And mis-selling is very easy. I mean, so it's very easy for a doctor to mis-sell to a patient because a patient is vulnerable. It's very easy for these guys because they use expensive brand ambassadors, whether it's Shah Rukh Khan, Hrithik Roshan. These are guys everyone looks up to. तो बोल रहा है तो कुछ तो सच होगा. इतनी सारी ads है. People aren't sophisticated enough to understand between ads and messages. Some are. You are. I am. Not everyone is. And then they pay for press releases, which appears like editorial content. And you keep on repeating it and repeating it. What do parents understand? They don't understand coding क्या है. They know कि हाँ मेरा बच्चा शर्मा के बच्चे से अच्छा करना चाहिए. अरे यार शर्मा का बच्चा ये क्लास ले रहा है. I also better take these classes. So, like you quite correctly said, there's FOMO, there is tiger mom attitude. I need to give my kids the best. I can't send them to a better school, so I feel guilty. So at least let me do this online learning. So I think this is a big, big issue. And it's very, the whole problem with being poor is it's very easy to cheat the poor. And that again causes me heartburn that you're creating such enormous educational debt amongst these guys who can't manage this. Typically, my driver, for example, or my liftman or whatever else, where is his money going to come from? And he doesn't have the ability to protect himself. So I think we had a choice, both Pradeep and me. When someone comes to you with a whatever 10 crores lawsuit or whatever else, one option, easy option is to say, I'm very sorry, मुझे please माफ कर दो, मैंने बड़ी गलती की, मैं दोबारा नहीं करूंगा, तुम please case निकाल दो. That's I think that's what they expected would happen, that we would just roll over and die. And to their surprise, it didn't happen. They said, okay, this is what you want, then this is what we will give you. We want the truth to come out. So the way I'm extremely happy because the truth can only come out in a court because they cannot lie in a court. They could lie as much as they liked in the media. They could lie as much as they liked because what would they do? What was their entire online reputation management? I mean, the entire world is a scam. The entire thing they were doing was they were taking down all critical reviews. They publicly acknowledged that we would go into YouTube and YouTube had given us permission to take out any video which was critical about white. I can't imagine YouTube has sold itself out. But they actually publicly acknowledged that yes, this is what we would do to all the critical videos. And then they would either create bots or employees who would start putting positive reviews. Even then, it's such a bad job full of grammatical errors, all copy and paste. They would just create these fake accounts. I said, झूठ भी बोलना है तो कम से कम ढंग से झूठ बोलना तो सीखो यार. Even that they pretty much messed up. So I think all these things are going to continue having consequences. But one thing I must point out, the amount of support Pradeep and I have had from social media platforms, I'm not on LinkedIn anymore, but on Twitter has been outstanding. I think what happens is it's a David versus Goliath battle, and that's what these large corporates don't think. Hey, I'm Goliath, what is this little David going to do? But the reality is there's only one David now. There are many, many small Davids. And each of these Davids has a voice. And all these voices together are powerful voices. And, I can promise you, Vita Jr. is not going to sue anyone else now for a long, long time because they've already ended up with egg on their face. So they can't, you never know what they can do and what they can't do. Maybe I should take that back. But I think it's very unlikely that they will do that again. So effectively, I think what's happened is thanks to that action, a lot of what they did is now coming out into the open. The tragedy is mainstream media is still turning a blind eye, completely pretending that this happened. Now we know Times of India is never going to open its mouth because they're investors. But these guys don't have a conscience, they don't have a soul, they don't care about their readers. They make such a big natak about right of free speech. But when it comes to people like Byju's, just because it affects your profits, you will not say the truth about them. And I think this is the biggest danger in India. It's this occult censorship. Occult in the sense it's not obvious. Now, Times of India is not obliged to run every story. So they can say, yeah, we didn't find it newsworthy. They can find 50 reasons. But the reason they're not running the story is because they want to protect their profits. And I think that's really tragic. And I'm honestly hoping, the court will, I have a lot of faith in the judiciary and the truth will come out. So that's one good thing. And I think as these guys plan to go global, A lot of the truth will come out in other countries. And I don't know whether you've noticed, but all the ads which Whitehead Jr. used to have with Wolf Gupta have all been taken down.
Yeah.
So at least as a result of this, the short term is they've stopped creating more imaginary children. I'm using my words very carefully right now because the last thing I want them to say is, hey, you said something about us. But, at least they stopped doing that. Otherwise, they started with 10 Wolf Guptas. For all they'd have created 20 Tiger Sharmas, or they would have created 30, Lion Shahs, who knows? So at
Yeah.
least that's gone away. Now their ads are at least much more toned down. So the ability of their ads to mislead parents is going to go down. I think parents are also becoming a little more aware about what's happening. So I think because now they're in the public eye, they will be much more careful about what they will do. And it's much harder. You can fool some of the people some of the time. You can't fool all the people all the time. And I think that's what you're saying. So I think it's a great, interesting story. And I wish more journalists, and I wish Harvard Business School at some point would do a case study on how to damage your brand.
So do you think all this, whatever is happening, it is definitely a lot of people know it, and there are a lot of people who should know about it. They also know what the
Not
people
enough, not enough.
not
So
enough.
I'll give you another example. Now, Hrithik Roshan is advertising. He's a celebrity. He's a brand ambassador. He's an endorser. He gets paid crores to do this. I don't know whether you're aware of this, but the Consumer Protection Act now says that every celebrity endorser who endorses a misleading lie is also legally liable.
So,
I think it's a matter of time when some smart lawyer is going to file a case against Hrithik Roshan. Hrithik Roshan has deep pockets and lots of money. And then he can't say, Mujhe nahi malum tha, because hey, this is all over. Today it's all over the news, it's on the High Court, it's on this thing. So I don't think it's going to be so. It's a lot of clever people who are going to come up with this stuff. Let me give you another example of what I call unintended consequences of what happens when you start harassing people who are just providing you with honest criticism. The Delhi High Court issued an order, both to Pradeep and me, saying take down the following tweets and don't say anything defamatory. Accordingly, we've never said anything defamatory in the first place, so that's fine. And take down the following tweets. They issued the order for Pradeep, he took it out. They issued the order to me, I took it out. What is interesting is in the Delhi High Court order, along with the tweets URLs, they also included the snapshots of the tweets,
hmm,
which means effectively those tweets which were critical, they were truthful and they were honest, but which were critical, actually got more publicity because now they were on the Delhi High Court website. And I'm sure he's not going to tell the judge, hey, you published. In one sense, the judge shared
yeah,
content which the judge felt was defamatory, deprecatory, and derogatory, and the judge inadvertently shared this content on the Delhi High Court website. So therefore, the lawyers went running around the next day and said, please, judge, please modify your order and please take down those snapshots. But I'm just trying to tell you that, in their attempt to take down honest critics, they shot themselves in one foot, they shot themselves in the second foot. Now, because both their feet have been shot, now they're putting their foot in their mouth. Let's see क्या क्या होता है.
so sir, do you think this is gonna be a in upcoming times, in the future times, when a new startup starts? So like we always have a lot of stories when a startup starting, people have certain things. Okay, so this brand war between Coca-Cola and PepsiCo happened,
Okay,
the ambush marketing happened, and all this happened, the war between Cadbury and Nestle and everything. Those are folklores for startup people. So do you think this is gonna be in the anytime, let's say 10 years later, someone starts, they'll be like, okay, we don't have to do that thing what happened there. We don't have to do that now.
I'm very, very hopeful. I think there will be short-term impact, long-term impact. And the short term is their ads will get cleaned up, they'll stop lying. What was happening is they were being seen as the role model for everyone. So every investor in every edutech startup would say, you copy the Baiju playbook. अगर वो ads करें, they would also say, अरे they coming out with these ridiculous ads, उनको तो कोई stop नहीं कर रहा है. तो भाईजू को कोई स्टॉप नहीं कर रहा है तो हम भी करेंगे. वुल्फ गुप्ता करेगा तो हम भी हमारा वुल्फ गुप्ता क्रिएट करेंगे. So effectively, they were tacitly encouraging this kind of lying because they were getting away with it. Now they've realized that lies have consequences. You can't get away with creating imaginary children. So I think that's great. So they will learn not to do the wrong thing. I think the investors are going to start speaking up in board meetings and say, look, don't do this rubbish. You'll
Yeah.
get into trouble. It's a reputational damage. not just for your brand, but for us because we're on your board. So I think, yes, of course. And that's what I meant about someone doing a case study. Because once it becomes a case study, it gets studied by MBA and stuff like that, then I think this will have a salutary experience on there is a line. These guys crossed the line, but they crossed it with impunity. They could get away with crossing the line, and because they crossed the line once, they kept on crossing it until there was no line left anymore. They'd actually erased the line completely. And because they've done it, everyone else has hum bhi kar sakte hain.
Very true.
Now I think people have come up to their senses. So I don't know whether you're aware, there was this new startup, I think it was called Chota Einstein,
Yeah, yeah, I know about that.
which is a complete, I think, taking White Hat Junior one step further and saying, चलो 2 साल के बच्चे को सुधारेंगे, and they shut the company down. Effectively, people said, don't make these ridiculous
Exactly.
claims. See, good things have already started to happen. Because you then had a White Hat and a White Hat, Junior. Then you would have had White Hat Junior plus Chota Einstein. Then you would have had a White Hat Junior plus Chota Einstein,
It
plus a
goes
Chota
on.
Abhimanyu or a Bada Abhimanyu or who knows what. So
Yeah.
now at least, so yes.
And
But I'll tell
practic.
you one more thing.
Yes, sir. Please.
One of the reasons we spoke up was also for two reasons. One is to let these corporate behemoths know that you cannot bully citizens, that you cannot expect कि हमारा बस चलेगा, that we are not going to roll over and die. And plus, it was also to set an example for other citizens that don't let yourself get bullied. There is enough support for the honest truth on social media platforms. That there are enough people who will support the truth and enough people who will find out it. Let's be honest, these guys can spend crores, they can employ hundreds of people, they already have hundreds of people to put tweets and false reviews and take down stuff. Now, what do I have? I don't have anything. What does Pradeep have? Nothing. But we have the support of the honest people on Twitter. We have the support of people who care about children. And I think that makes a big difference. And I think that's one thing which I've learned. And I'm hoping that other people will also realize it. You can't fool people all the time anymore, thanks to social media. You could do it in the past, because if your only source of news was news media and the mainstream media was bought over, there was really no ability to protect the individual citizen. I think that's gone. And I'm very hopeful now. The Consumer Protection Act is becoming stronger. You can actually file a complaint online. You don't need a lawyer to do that. And I think enough people will say, hey, that's exactly how I got cheated. But they kept quiet because they didn't know what to do about it. But now they know what to do about it. And therefore, so many things are coming out which I wasn't aware of, which people are now sharing publicly. तो हमको लगा था प्रॉब्लम इतना छोटा है, एक्चुअली प्रॉब्लम इतना बड़ा है, and for all we know it may be इतना बड़ा है. So at some point, someone, whether it's going to be a whistleblower, whether it's going to be an investigative journalist, is going to start finding out. You can't hide your skeletons in the cupboard once you go to court.
Very true. So don't you think Facebook and Google should have also taken down, the note of
Absolutely.
all the ads?
You actually try putting an ad on Google and they have so many strict criteria and proof and stuff like that. They turned a blind eye, and I think it just proves they're also corporate behemoths which are soulless and they also only care about profit. हाँ तो डॉक्टर मालपानी को लिंक्डइन से क्यों उड़ाया? बिकॉज बाइजूस इज अ बिग एडवर्टाइजर ऑन लिंक्डइन. तो
LinkedIn.
डॉक्टर मालपानी का क्या फर्क पड़ता है? लेकिन ये लोग बोलेंगे तो मनी टॉक्स. आई थिंक दैट्स द रियलिटी एंड आई थिंक दीज गाइस टर्न्ड अ ब्लाइंड आई. They allowed the usage of Sundar Pichai, who's their CEO, to be
Yes.
used on these ads. I think what you don't have any self-respect or what, Sundar? Google doesn't have any self-respect that they allow the Google CEO's portrait to be used on all these ads. And when we pointed out, we told White Hat Junior, you use Narendra Modi ji's, who's the PM of India's picture in your ad. You know what they say? We don't know. It wasn't us. We're not running these ads anymore. Humko kya malum? Can you imagine? They're just lying through their teeth. The ideal mature thing would have been to get up and accept, yes, we goofed, we made a mistake. वो तो रहा. वो तो मुझे नहीं मालूम. I don't know. It wasn't in my time. But like I said before, they can't get away with this in court. And if you start lying in court, then I think they're in serious trouble because then that's perjury. And that has consequences. And then individuals, so we can tomorrow in the High Court when we are present, we can call the marketing director and we can say, okay, please tell us, was this true or not? And in a court, when a marketing director or an executive is on the witness stand, he's going to save his skin. He's not going to care about his employer. So lots of these things are going to blow up in multiple fashions. Trust me.
So always whenever it comes to branding, marketing, any brand, we always talk about the honesty with our customer, the transparency, the trust with our customer. So do you think these kind of incidents, or all these whatever happens, and when a brand goofs up and then they come back, as a customer, as a person on the other side of the table, how tough it is for any customer or any guy, like for example, suppose let's I wouldn't believe any such ads after that. So like what happens, like how do you get your customer, and why is it so important to be honest to your customer?
I think great point again, because a lot of the problem with what Byju's and Bytech Junior done is they damage the entire startup edutech space. Because the good guys, the good startups in the edutech space, all their funding got sucked up and everything went here. All their customers got sucked up. None of the investors, they're all basically going to say, how are we ever going to catch up with these people? Or they would say, even worse, we'll give you the money provided you do exactly the same thing these guys are doing. And I think, and the worst thing is now customers have burned their fingers. So anyone who signed up and wasted their money on whether it was a White Hat or a Byju's is not going to trust any other startup, edutech startup, no matter what. So I think the standard is there's a cycle. The system needs to clean itself of all this rubbish, which is going to take its own time. And then I think once it's done that, people will realize back to basics. Trust is the most important thing a brand has. And you need to respect your customer. And if you respect your customer, you will grow. The growth will be slow, the growth will be organic. But there's no need really to try to get rich quick, because it's when you try to get rich quick that you start taking these shortcuts. So hopefully people will realize that you can burn your fingers when you play with fire, and that's why you shouldn't play with fire.
Right. Thank you so much, sir, for this interaction. It was so lovely having you, and I'm sure our readers will have a great time listening to this, whatever you have discussed, and they'll have the great insight. And I really hope I get to catch up with you soon on some other update. Thank you so much for
Right.
joining today. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much for inviting me. Take care. Bye.
Take care.